Welcome to Sox's Nightmare Survival Guide, where I, Soxdie, explain how to overcome different scenarios you can encounter in Phasmophobia's hardest difficulty, Nightmare. In this guide, I'll be going over what you need to do in order to figure out which ghost it is in this scenario. The scenario being the following evidences: EMF level 5 and freezing temperatures, which gives you these four ghosts to pick from: the Jinn, the Oni, the Shade, and the Twins. And since you are playing on Nightmare difficulty, this is all the evidence you will be receiving, and you will not be able to check your sanity. This means you'll have to run some specific tests to figure out which ghost you have in the scenario. Before we get into the video, I just want to remind you to like the video if you're enjoying the content you are seeing, and also subscribe if you want to see more of this content. I plan on doing this series until I cover all the ghost types and all the ghost scenarios you can get. All the clips you are seeing are from my stream, which you can come and find me streaming weekdays at 12 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/soxdie. Come check me out if you have the time, and let's get on with the video. Now let's talk about each of the ghosts and some of their basic mechanics before divulging into the testing phase. Let's first talk about the Jinn. The Jinn hunts at 50% sanity, has normal wandering speed during a hunt, but very fast chasing speed during a hunt if the breaker is on. It has a normal interaction rate and normal footstep sounds. The Jinn's ability relies on if the breaker is on, otherwise it cannot perform them. Since turning off a breaker would be harmful to a Jinn, they will not do it. They cannot turn off the breaker. Meaning, you can immediately rule out the ghost being a Jinn if it does turn off the breaker. The Jinn also has an ability where they can lower the sanity of nearby players by 25% and will leave an EMF reading at the breaker. This can be used to determine if the ghost is a Jinn or not, though you do need to be careful as this will drop your sanity very fast, which could get you off guard with a seemingly early hunt. Next on the list we have the Oni. The Oni hunts at 50% sanity, has normal hunting speeds, normal footstep sounds, but is incredibly active, having one of the highest interaction rates of all ghosts if a player is nearby. The Oni is one of the most fun ghosts in the game, as it will constantly be doing interactions when you're nearby. This leads to you getting easy interaction photos, as they will be happening a lot. The Oni can also throw an object farther and faster than normal ghosts. However, unlike a poltergeist, the Oni can only throw one object at a time. Throwing objects does not lower sanity. The Oni might seem spooky because they will constantly be doing interactions and ghost events, but they don't have anything that benefits them during hunts or anything that allows them to hunt faster or earlier. There is, however, a specific ghost event that Oni cannot do, so you want to be on the lookout for it. This event is the Smoke Ball Ghost event. The Oni cannot do this event, so if you do see a Smoke Ball Ghost event, you can rule out the ghost being an Oni. Though you do need to be careful with this, because you may not see the ghost when it starts an event and immediately hear a hissing sound. This could happen if the ghost spawns right on top of you, leading you to believe it was a Smoke Ball Ghost event when it wasn't. The hissing sound from the Smoke Ball event sounds a bit different than other hissing sounds you can hear. And for our next ghost, we'll be going over the Shade. Unlike the Oni, who is one of the most active ghosts when a player is nearby, the Shade is one of the least active ghosts in the game when players are nearby. The Shades hunt at 35% sanity, has normal hunting speeds, normal footstep sounds, but is incredibly shy, having one of the lower interaction rates in the entire game if a player is nearby. The Shade is basically the polar opposite in terms of interactions of the Oni. It cannot perform EMF level 3 actions while in the same room as a player. It cannot hunt if a player is in the same room as it, and it hunts at a very low sanity. When using a summoning circle, the Shade will sometimes appear as a shadowy figure. This isn't a conclusive thing, but Shades do this more often than other ghosts. The Shade also cannot perform ghost events when players are at high sanity, or at least they have a very low chance of doing so. If you get a ghost event near the start of a game, or multiple, or when your sanity is high, you can usually rule out a Shade. On to our last ghost of the four, we have the Twins. The Twins can hunt at 50% sanity, and it has two different hunting speeds, depending on which one is hunting. They both have normal footstep sounds, and they have two interaction ranges, allowing the Twins to interact in multiple places at the same time. The Twins are usually a very active ghost, considering that they have two interaction ranges and can both interact at the same time. The so-called twin interactions is when a ghost performs two actions at the same time or nearly the same time in two different rooms. Only the Twins can do this reliably, and is a good way to tell if it is the Twins. When the Twins hunt, they can either spawn as the main ghost or the decoy ghost. The main ghost moves at 90% movement speed, while the decoy ghost moves at 110% movement speed. This can help you figure out the ghost over the course of multiple hunts and listen for footsteps. The decoy will not produce any evidence other than EMF level 5, so you might have to look around a bit to find where the actual ghost room is. Alright, and with all the basics being covered, next we're going to talk about the testing for each of the ghosts. First one we'll be testing for is the Jinn. There are a few things to look out for throughout the entirety of the game. If the ghost turns off the breaker, you can immediately rule out a Jinn. You do have to watch out for turning on too many lights or the ghost turning on too many lights and tripping the breaker that way. The Jinn can turn off the breaker via turning too many lights on. Now, if the ghost doesn't turn off the breaker over the course of the entire game, you will want to do more tests for a Jinn. Since any ghost can choose not to turn off the breaker, what you can do is leave an EMF reader at the breaker. If you get an EMF reading at the breaker and the breaker is still on, you can tell the ghost is a Jinn who is using their ability, though you can't guarantee either a ghost turning off the breaker or the Jinn using their ability, so you will need a hunt to be certain. When testing for a Jinn during a hunt, bring a smudge stick so it doesn't kill you due to its fast chasing speed. This will also let you know what the ghost is, so using a cursed item to get hunted will help speed up the process. Keep in mind that the Jinn needs the breaker on to be able to use any of its abilities, including its chasing speed. The Jinn test is one of the ones you want to save for last, as you do need to be chased during hunt, which is easily the most dangerous part of being hunted, so save the Jinn test for last unless you have a death wish. For our next test, we'll be testing for a Shade. The Shade can only hunt at 35% sanity, which we can use to our advantage. If you choose to use a cursed item to get the 0% sanity, take 2 sanity pills. On Nightmare, you get 25% sanity per pill, meaning you'll have above 35%. The Shade won't be able to hunt you at this amount of sanity, so if the ghost hunts you, you can rule out the Shade. Though, make sure you are staying in the light or have the candle on hand so you can keep your sanity high. Now, for a less dangerous test for a Shade, you will have to keep an eye out for what interactions you are getting with the Shade. If the ghost is doing EMF level 3 actions while you're in the room with it, it cannot be a Shade, as they cannot do that. The Shades are highly unlikely to form a ghost event at high sanities. So if you get a ghost event early on into the game, or when you know you have high sanity, you likely don't have a Shade. If you do get hunted, and you are within the Shade hunt threshold, check to see where it hunted from. Shades can't hunt from the same room as the player, so if you see it hunt in the same room as you, it cannot be a Shade. I recommend saving the Shade for testing once you get down to 0% sanity, and then taking some pills so you know what your sanity currently is. This can either help you rule out the Shade or tell you that the ghost is a Shade. And the next ghost we'll be testing for is the Oni. Since the Oni has no special abilities in terms of hunting, you will have to look for clues outside of hunts. Luckily, the Oni is very active, the exact opposite of the Shade, so it will perform more actions if the player is nearby and can throw objects very far and very fast, which is very unique to it besides the poltergeist. One thing you should be on the lookout for is the smoke ball ghost event, as the Oni cannot do this, which allows you to rule out the Oni if it does. If you think the ghost is an Oni, definitely hang out in the ghost room with it and see what interactions it's doing and how many interactions are happening. It might be a good idea to move items from another room into the ghost room so you have a higher chance of seeing the faster throw from the Oni. Since hunting won't do you too good for the Oni, the only reason why you would want to be hunted is to see if you can rule out the other ghost. If your sanity is about 35%, you can rule out the Shade. If it seems normal speed and normal chasing speed, it's likely an Oni, unless you are below the 35% sanity threshold of a Shade, as they have the same speed. However, in that case, you should be able to tell which ghost it is based on the interactions you have been given when you are near it. Basically, when you're doing the hunt test, if the ghost sounds like a ghost normally does, it's an Oni. And now on to our last ghost to test for, we have the Twins. The Twins have a few things to look out for, especially during hunts. So throughout the course of the game, listen to where your interactions are happening and how often. If you are in the ghost room and hear an interaction decently away from the ghost room, it could be the Twins. The dead giveaway is if the ghost interacts twice within a second in 2 different rooms. You might hear this referred to as twin interactions. Only the Twins can do this, so be on the lookout for this if you think you might have the Twins as a ghost. It will also seem like the Twins interact more than normal due to having 2 interaction ranges. Like the Oni and the Jinn, the Twins hunt at 50% sanity, meaning you can't rule it out using the sanity threshold. However, the Twins have a special property where they will either hunt at 90% movement speed or 110% movement speed, which is quite noticeable to hear since there's a 20% difference between the two. In this scenario where you think you might have the Twins and haven't been able to figure it out yet off of the twin interactions, try listening to the footsteps over multiple hunts. If the speed seems to change while it's roaming around the house, it'll be the Twins in this scenario. This will be over 2 different hunts, so maybe hunt 1, it's the decoy twin, and the second hunt, it's the main twin, and you'll hear that 20% difference in footstep sounds. And let's move on to the best way to test for these ghosts. So ideally, you will already want to have EMF level 5, freezing temperatures, before doing any other testing. Otherwise, you might be wasting your time. Technically, in this scenario, you don't need to get hunted, but getting hunted will give you information as well. Be on the lookout for smoke ball events, early ghost events, twin interactions, and the breaker turning off. The Oni can't do smoke ball events, the Shade can't do early ghost events, or when you're at high sanity, the Twins can perform twin interactions, and the Jinn cannot turn off the breaker. With this information, you can figure out what the ghost is or isn't. You can really only be sure if you have the twins with these actions, as they are the only one that can have 2 interactions in 2 different rooms at once. That said, you should do some hunt tests, especially for a shade, or at least to rule it out. Use the curse item to get the 0% sanity and get hunted. For this first hunt, just listen to the footsteps. They should sound normal, but if you are brave, you can also check for the Jinn chasing speed. You do want to note the speed while wandering, because the twins will have 2 different movement speeds, which will give away what sort of ghost it is. It might be worth getting hunted 3 times, just so you can check for the change in movement speed in the twins. After that, take 2 sanity pills so that you are 50% sanity. Check and see if you get hunted while maintaining 50% sanity or just below it. If you do, you can rule out the shade, and if you don't, it's likely a shade. So either you have a shade or you do need to do a chase test while the breaker is on. You will definitely want to smudge for this test so you don't die to the Jinn running you down. Check the movement speed of the ghost when it chases you. Also make sure the breaker is on, otherwise the Jinn won't be as fast when it chases you. If it seems to be really fast when coming after you, it's a Jinn in this case. If not, it will be an Oni. There's a possibility that you may end up in a scenario where you can't tell if the ghost is a shade or Oni because their hunting patterns are the exact same, so you'll need to look elsewhere. Staying in the ghost room is your best bet, as the shade won't do EMF level 3 type interactions, whereas the Oni will be very active with you in the room with it. This should be very telling due to the vast difference in interaction rates between the two. If the ghost is very active and is performing EMF level 3 type interactions, it's an Oni. If it's not active and not performing EMF level 3 interactions, it's a shade. And with that, let's go to the scenario difficulty. For this one, I'm rating it 3 out of 5 stars. The reason for this difficulty is that while you may figure out the ghost by eliminating them due to specific actions, all the hunts are very similar. The twins have a slight speed difference that is easier to tell over the course of multiple hunts. The Jinn is a dangerous ghost due to the fast chasing speed during a hunt, though Onis and Shades don't have anything special during the hunts other than the hunt sanity threshold of the Shades being lower. Usually with a few hunts you can determine if it's either a Jinn or the twins, but you will have to look around for specific things that either the Oni can't do, such as the smoke ball event, or things that a Shade cannot do, such as EMF level 3 in the same room as you. The scenario does become easier the sooner you figure out that the ghost isn't a Jinn or the twins, as you know you should be safe during a hunt, and know what you now need to look for. Overall, I would say this is a pretty fun scenario, pretty balanced. The Jinn can be the most dangerous of the 4, but do be careful of the twins hunting from a weird direction. Onis and Shades are polar opposites, so it'll be hard to get the ghost wrong if you are down to these 2 ghosts. Listen over the course of multiple hunts to figure out if those twins or not. Keep an eye out for those twin interactions, those early ghost events for a Shade, the breaker turning off for a Jinn, the smoke ball ghost events for an Oni, as all these will either tell you what the ghost is or rule out what the ghost could have been. And in the next episode, I will be going over the scenario involving EMF level 5 and the dots projector. Stay tuned. If you made it this far in the video, I'd like to thank you for watching this far. Really do appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy the video. Hopefully you like this sort of content. If you want to see more like this, obviously subscribe. You can see me stream live on Twitch weekdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you made it this far, why don't you comment what your favorite ghost is in this scenario, or maybe what's your least favorite ghost in this scenario? What's scary to you about this situation? All right, and with that, the next video will be on the dots in EMF 5, so look forward to that. It should be out in a few days. Thanks.